I think there's just so much happening in this space right now. AI is coming at people from every angle, and I think it's hard for people right now sometimes to kind of cut through that and figure out where and how can I make this most relevant for myself, where and how can I plug it into my business in the most effective way. And I think also, let's be honest, there are still risks with AI as well. You can't suddenly just say, I'm going to outsource all of my itinerary planning to AI and trust it to do a good job. We know sometimes responses are generic, sometimes responses are not tailored well enough. And also, this thing makes mistakes. We could all ask it the same 10 questions. We might not get exactly the same answers, but we know in travel you've got to be very specific. There's a lot of stuff in this industry that can go wrong if the detail is not correct. And so I think it's going to be a bit of a journey that we all go through as to where and how do we use these tools, where do we need to apply our own expertise on top, where do we still need to do more checks, and honestly, what are other areas where perhaps we're not as advanced as we might think, but which of course will develop over the coming years. I think the travel advisor role has continued to evolve over time. And of course, I think there's been inflection points in the past where people have said, oh, technology is developing so quickly, are travel agents still going to be relevant in the future? Kind of a few examples on that. OTAs came along and the question was, okay, well, is everyone just going to book travel online themselves? That didn't happen. Travel advisors were still relevant. COVID happened. Everybody was suddenly doing everything online. High Street was closed down. The question was, what happens after? Well, travel advisors still came back, and in some places it's been even more relevant. And in certain markets, we're seeing the growth of travel advisors actually picking up again and really seeing a re-acceleration in that. I think, of course, right now the question is, what about AI? How does this influence it? And I think my take on that is, it's kind of an interesting and kind of inflection point for agents. And I view AI as a tool that can really empower them to do even more than they currently do and to do it better. And perhaps to give kind of a couple examples on that, one of the things that we've heard from many advisors is, we're struggling to hire, we don't necessarily have time, we have too much work to deal with. Well, AI is going to be a great tool because instead of perhaps spending hours and hours researching certain destinations that you don't know, AI technology can be leveraged to do that research incredibly quickly and fast track some of that sales process so you can work with more clients, get more quotes out there, drive better and faster responses to the queries that are coming in. As I think about TAAP, we want to be the tool that's there behind the scenes. We want to be the tool to empower advisors. But of course, we want to leave advisors to do their job and interact with the customers. And we're never the ones that are interacting with their end customers. We're not trying to automate kind of the conversation either. We believe that's where the travel advisor has the real power. They are the person in between. They're the person that knows their customer. And that's often why the customer's coming to them, because they know that person, they trust that person. And I view our role very much as to, how can we make the advisor or the agent in the middle even better at their job? So when a customer comes to them, they can get back to them faster, they can give them better recommendations and deliver an overall greater experience to them. But of course, leaving the agent in the middle to really control that conversation and to build and strengthen that relationship with all of the end clients that they have. I think we're in the very fortunate position with the TAAP product of, we kind of have the best of both worlds. We take things that are being developed up for our consumer business, so for Expedia.com and Hotels.com, and if they make sense, we will roll them out on our platform if we think it's going to be a benefit to our agents. At the same time, we invest very heavily in specific developments for travel agents themselves, based on feedback they provide to us, and we'll develop new tooling and functionality to support them. But of course, with all of these things, there's a question about adoption. You don't want to suddenly put 20 new features in front of somebody and hope that it's going to work. And so everything that we do, we test it very carefully. Sometimes there's things we're not sure if they're going to work or not. So we'll roll them out to a small portion of agents. We'll see how that goes. If it's great, we expand it to more. If it doesn't work, we say, well, maybe that's not the right thing, but we've tested it, we've figured it out. And I think particularly into this new world that we're going, when we talk about AI, so many different AI things happening all over the place. Some are going to work really well, some are probably not going to work so well, but we will test, get feedback, and roll out the things that work best and resonate best with our agents. We're experimenting constantly. And I think for us, the most important thing, and one of the things we spend a lot of time doing, is getting feedback from the agents that we work with. Everything we do, we put in front of them. We test it, we see how they interact with it on the site, but we also go and speak to them. We ask them for feedback on features that we've launched already, and we ask them for feedback on things that are missing and things that would make their lives easier. And then, of course, we want to test all of this. We only want to put things out there that are going to work. But of course, to that experimentation point, sometimes you don't know until you try. Some experiments work really well, others don't, and that's just the nature of developing software and products. I think almost every single country that we operate in, not just continent, is different. We see differences in terms of how travel agencies are structured. We see differences in terms of how they work. And we also see differences in what's important to agents and travelers in different countries. If we take APAC, and as we talked about earlier today, it is the fastest growing region in the world for travel. It's also a region where there's a huge amount of innovation. It's also a region where there's a lot of interesting local competition, and we're as kind of one of the biggest global providers. And so I think across all of these markets, there's nuances and differences, but there's also a lot of commonalities as well that we see between the markets. And it's always a balance that we try and strike between how do we build things that are going to work for everybody, but then also how do we recognize local differences and things we need to respond to. Again, one of the things we talked about earlier today was payments. Payments is something that can be very specific to individual markets, and that's of course something we need to recognize. We need to put the right payment types in front of the right agents in the right markets so that they can work effectively with us. It's kind of our operating model in all of the markets that we work in. And whenever we go into a new market or whether we're expanding in a market, we have a dedicated sales team that is on the ground in every market that we operate within. They're responsible for signing up new agents, but most importantly, they're responsible for working with all of the agents that are on our platform. That could be helping them on board, helping them learn how to use the platform, helping them resolve any issues or challenges that they have. And that takes a variety of different forms. It could be them picking up the phone to speak to somebody who's newly signed up, help them understand how to use the tool, resolve any questions. We'll run webinars, which could be educating agents about how to use the platform, or we run events in combination with, say, tourism boards or with hotel groups, again, to promote different features, functionalities, and to help agents learn about different destinations. And then we run a bunch of in-destination events as well, where we'll bring groups of agents together. It gives agents the opportunity to meet other agents that are doing similar things, but also helps us build that face-to-face connection. And across all of this, it's really about how do we educate, how do we make sure they know how our platform works, and for us to get feedback from them as well as to what's working well, what more can we do to help them. And that's just an ongoing process that we do everywhere. And of course, if it's a market where they're not as familiar with us, we need to do even more of that because we're maybe not the household name that they know. In other markets, maybe that's a little bit easier, but we just adapt depending on the market and depending what resonates in those countries. It's a difficult question. I mean, as I mentioned at the start, we work with about 40,000 agencies around the world, over 160,000 advisors, and that number is just growing up every year. And honestly, it's a real mix between them. We've got some very large agency groups that are growing really quickly. We've also got some small independents that are also growing incredibly fast as well. We also see big differences between them. For example, we've got a very large partner in the US, they're called Fora. They started in 2021, super small in 2021. They've been growing on an amazing trajectory, and almost everything that they do is looking at how do they embed AI in their operations and put AI at the heart of what they do. At the same time, we've got some very small agencies where, again, they're nimble, they're dynamic, they're looking at these new tools and technologies, and they're integrating that into their workflows to make them better at what they do. Then, of course, there's a whole bunch in the middle where perhaps they're testing AI, perhaps they're not testing AI. I think for many, it's kind of an exploratory stage at the minute. And we're actually running a session in this room this afternoon with some of our agents to explore that theme in more detail, to understand where they're using it, how they're using it, but also how they think about it for the future. But of course, these are new technologies. They're not necessarily things that people are used to. It will take time to adapt. But I really think it's a super interesting time to be part of this industry because it is a time for change. But I think the agencies that really lean in on that will put themselves in an incredible position to ride the wave and benefit that comes from all this technology that's coming out right now.